Hello and welcome to Newsmakers for this Thursday, July 11th, 2024. Hope your summer is going well. Thanks for checking us out however you found us. And while you're here, make sure you like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Now, every so often here on the show, we like to take you behind the scenes and get to know some of the people you see and don't see that bring your favorite CHCH programming to air. And today, I'm very pleased to be joined by co-anchor of Morning Live, Annette Hamm. Raised on a tobacco farm outside Langton, Ontario, Annette went to school for broadcasting at Mohawk College, where she was named an alumni of distinction in 2016. She started her career at CHCH in 1986 prior to graduating and has done basically all there is to do on air here at the station, including crime reporter. She co-anchored the noon news while CH was on TV. She also hosted a morning news and business program called The Morning Market, and since 2005 has been the smiling face that helps get Hamilton going in the morning as a co-anchor of Morning Live. Outside of work, she's been named a Woman of Distinction. She's a Paul Harris Fellow and is involved with a number of charities and organizations in the region. And whoo, that was a mouthful, Annette. But
Wow.
I went back in the archives. That first one, the first one we saw actually, was your first job here. You talked about this on the 70th anniversary about how you had to literally basically take things from satellite and type them out.
Yeah,
what was your very first job?
Satellite monitor.
So what did that entail?
So I was going to school at Mohawk at the time, and I would come here in the afternoons because in the afternoons, I think it started at 4 o'clock, we would get our first feeds in from Atlantic Canada, because at that point we belonged to this independent satellite network. So it was, stations from across the country. And they would send 3 or 4 stories in that would come in on a feed, and it only came in once. And you had to record it, so you had to press this. These were gigantic machines. You had to press it, and then you had to remember of getting the in and out cues for the reporter packages. And then I would tell our writer and our producer of the 6 what it was all about, and then I would write the intros to them.
So growing up on a tobacco farm, when did you know that this is what you wanted to do?
I didn't. It was kind of a fluke. I did know. I remember promising myself, because we moved off our farm when I was 12, and so I worked on other farms. And I just remember one blistering hot day in the sun thinking, and I was filthy from sand and from tobacco gum. Tobacco juice is very, very sticky. And I thought, I don't care what I do. I just want to be able to work in an office and dress nicely every day. Eventually I get to, I went to Mohawk for broadcast journalism. I was going to go for something else at university, and my dad, still with that farmer mentality, is very practical. What are you going to do with what I was going to take at university? And I'm like, I don't really have a plan. He goes, maybe you go to college instead. So I just happened, I went to my guidance officer the next day, and it was like, oh, Mohawk, this seems interesting. Broadcast journalism. Was it love at first sight though with broadcast journalism? Yeah. Once I got into it, so we started out doing some radio stuff, and I was like, radio's interesting, but it wasn't how I got my news as a kid. Because our family always watched the news every night, and so I'm like, oh, that's not. It's more TV. So once we got started into the TV stuff, I'm like, okay, this is it.
Yeah, because I was kind of the same way, opposite in terms of, I went to school for radio, television at Niagara, and then I got an internship, started working while I was still in school in radio. I definitely gave me a leg up on a lot of my my fellow students at the time, but it really gave me that real world experience that most times universities don't have, and I think this job especially, not dissing anyone who has a university degree, but because this is what we learned hands-on in school, and then to get to do it right away, I feel like really helped get that love going to start.
And the immediacy and everything. And it really helped me get my assignments at Mohawk finished faster, because when you realize in real time, you've got to be really on the ball and fast. And it just helped me get my assignments finished.
So 1986, when you think back to 1986 and you think now.
I still remember my very first day.
Tell us about it.
Yeah, I remember. So it was a weekend, and it was a weekend writing shift. Because what I would do is I would work every other weekend, and then every other week I would do the satellite monitoring because I was still going to school full time at the time. So yeah, I remember coming in and just learning how to write things and writing up stuff for the half-hour newscast, and then I would go home and I'd sit there and I wrote that. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But, I mean, we didn't even have computers then. It was electronic typewriters.
Electronic typewriters.
Yes.
I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, I know, nobody does. So
I'm sure there's one hanging around here. I'm sure Dave Milo might be able to find one.
They were this big. It was huge, and you would put in your stuff and then make sure it was correct, and then you'd put in. We had this paper that had like. It was attached, like 7 copies were attached. So you'd put the big roll of paper in and then press go, and then it would come up, your script and everything would come up in that. And then they split the papers up, so the anchor would get one and the producer would get one. And yeah.
So 1986, obviously, it's been a while, but what's the secret to your longevity? Because a lot of times you'll go to a different station. A lot of times there'll be things out of your control. For you, why do you think you're still here?
I stayed here. I think it's because I learned to do different things. I didn't want to be on air. At first, I thought I was very happy to be a writer, very happy to be a producer, and I just got to do so many jobs. The reporting job kind of fell in my lap as an accident because somebody was leaving, and then I remember my very first story. It was a fire, and I wasn't supposed to be sent to report to it, but it was a fire that was like very, very close to where I was living at the time. So I went with a camera guy, and it was a really awful fire, and they were like, okay, well, you're there, so there's your first package.
So in that time you were a crime reporter, general assignment, environment. I mean, you've done a lot. You hosted your own show.
You've done your homework.
I have done my homework. Thank you. Anybody who watches this show who thinks I just come on and turn on a microphone. So did you ever have a crisis of conscience in that maybe this isn't what I want to do? Did you ever have a bad story? Was there ever any doubt in your mind that this maybe isn't what I want to do?
Never that this isn't what I want to do, but there were a lot of stories where it's like, stories where I made mistakes, and then you feel like, oh man, like how can I ever do this again? But you just get back in the saddle again, and you realize that, or you think that you've missed something huge. I remember once there was I was the crime reporter at the time, and there was a very large bust of biker rings. Right. And so I thought I did a pretty good job, and then went to court the next day. And the next day, like the paper, the Hamilton Spectator, had this huge story on, and they had 3 reporters on it. I'm like, how did that happen? And then I find out afterwards. They had been planning to do this story before the bust actually happened. So I'm like, oh, because I was almost sick the next day. It was like, what? How did I miss all of this? Right, not knowing that. Yeah.
Because I find that interesting because like to never really have a doubt. Because even now I'm 30-ish. I've been doing this just a few years, but there are times where I think like, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? You never had that.
No, because I like doing it. Sure, there's lots of times where I'm like, you get discouraged, and especially as a woman, everybody's judging although you run into this a bit too, what your hair looks like, what your voice sounds like, how you do interviews. People think that you have a perceived slant against something, right? So there have been times where it's like, I don't want to be in that kind of spotlight anymore, but I do love what I do.
Yeah. I guess that's a good way of putting it. You've been very good in terms of providing me advice with don't read the comments. Don't read the comments.
And I
don't read the comments.
Yeah. But every once in a while, one will sneak through, and sometimes it'll sneak through like because I've got all kinds of settings on my social media, so I don't have to see that, right? I don't care. But yeah, every once in a while, something will sneak through, and I'm like, I feel kind of bad for the people that are, behind a phone or behind a laptop writing this kind of stuff, because I think, how bad are things for you that you're going to do this?
Yeah. Like what's going on in your life this is how you're spending your time. Because I always find that too. I'm like, I wish I had as much energy about anything than you do in terms of commenting on my appearance or the way I sound or the way I look one certain day. I really appreciate your advice when it comes to that, because again, as someone who's a bit younger, grew up on the internet, I'm always on the internet, and sometimes, yes, they do sneak through.
Yeah.
And
I used to get letters, real letters.
Okay, that's what I mean. I would respect the letter more. I would if there was a handwritten letter that with your return address and signed on the bottom, I would actually respect that more than some anonymous internet comment. Because my thing is like, well, listen, my grandma has probably already told me what you said. She probably already told me to get a haircut. She probably already said I need to be better.
I didn't say that, by the way. I didn't say that you need to cut your hair.
No matter what the people on the internet are saying, my grandma has said worse to my face. So that's how I think about it. Let's go back to that being a woman on television. When you are being attacked for your appearance, what have you found it harder to go on camera every day No.
I used to. It used to really bother me. Maybe it's like I've just reached the age where I don't care anymore. I'm going to be myself, and
it's working. You're still employed. Yeah. Because I find like a lot of the younger women I've talked to on this show, they struggle with that. They still struggle with finding that. Ignoring the outside, did it get to a certain point? Like I said, is it just now that you're like, it doesn't matter?
No, I would say like maybe in the last 10 or 15 years kind of thing. It's...
Yeah, I like that.
I am what I am, and I'm not going to change for like one person over one comment.
Yeah. No, I like that. Let's go back to your reporting days. Was there a story that stood out to you the most in terms of a difference you made, somebody you met? Is there something or that helped maybe instill your love for what you do a little bit more?
I think just meeting like ordinary people, like some people are all like, I interviewed this celebrity, or that's never been my thing.
Except for Alex Trebek.
Well, yeah. I was so...
Except for Alex Trebek.
And you know what? I'm my worst critic.
The only time you've ever gotten starstruck. Tell us about it.
And so Jeopardy was airing on our station, and then he came on Morning Live, and you know what? That is the worst interview I've ever done. I can't look at it. I cringe when I'm like, why did I ask the questions that I asked? But I was literally like, I was so starstruck with him.
Yeah.
I was like, this is the smartest man. And now I see it and I'm like, oh, I want to go back and say, Annette Hamm, why did you do this?
You're going to comment on it. We're going to post it. You're going to comment on it. Who is this woman? What is she asking these questions
Why is she asking these questions?
So you don't get starstruck. So it's the ordinary people, the people people that welcome you into their home. To tell something, even heartbreaking stuff.
Because there was some really, really awful things that we had to do before social media. Because, as the crime reporter, I would often have to go to like the homes of crash victims or murder victims or whatever, and you would have to ask for a photo of that person, because this is before social media, when people would just, you'd see somebody's whole background on social media. You just, that's a person, then okay, let's go to their social media, let's grab a photo of them, right? There's no interaction with the family. But you would actually have to go to the door and say like, I'm terribly sorry to do this. I don't want to do this, but this would, it's putting a face on a story kind of thing. A lot of times I got doors slammed in my face, and I think I would probably do the same. But so many times we got invited in, and it was like, sit and have a cup of coffee with the family, and they would talk about, their son or daughter or mom or dad or whoever there was a death with. And yeah, like, I'd come out of that and say, like, I was kind of like, okay, are they still in shock? And I feel bad that I've done that. But then it's like, no, it's like sometimes you would get a letter back or a comment back saying, thank you for the way that,
And I always find, like, the one thing about this job that, especially on the reporting beat, like, I've worked in a newsroom, the Boston bombing, Sandy Hook, like these really tragic days in world history. And it is heavy to go home and sit with that for the day, and then have to come back the next day, and it's a different story. It could be grand opening of something fun, right?
Because you're always thinking, like, I'm like, okay, yes, the news cycle does move on, but every once in a while there'll be something that triggers something, and I'm thinking, those people are still dealing with that. And I think before social media came along and you would have to actually have that physical interaction with people, there was more of a connection and more thinking that, okay, I'm not just going to go on to the next fluffy story and we're going to be fine. It was like, yeah, stuff would sit with you.
What's the best piece of advice you've gotten in your career?
Listen. Don't worry about asking questions. Listen.
How so?
It's just because sometimes what a person is telling you, I used to get all, and when I went from doing reporting to actually doing like live interviews when I started on Morning Live, it was like, you'd have like a minute 30 to get your whole entire day's story in. And now I've got 5 minutes, and I'm like, so I would like write out questions, and I'd have them on my sheet of paper, and I'd be so focused on that I'd miss something that the person that I was talking to would say. And I did get like one woman emailed. She was very critical, but she had a great point. It's like, stop looking at your questions and listen. And to whoever that woman was, like, thank you, because it was so important. And now it's like, because the person could say something that just triggers a question in your head that, oh, well, okay, let's go off of that, instead of what I've already got down because I'm so nervous that I'm not going to fill my 5 minutes.
Yeah, and I found that actually last week, where it was, you had the questions, you had the prompter, and yes, there are some suggested questions.
Yeah.
But you are nervous about filling that 5 minutes, right?
It is. And after a while, your internal body clock knows, okay, we're at 3 minutes now. And then it's like, I'm at 4 minutes. And then I hear in my ear, 1 minute left.
Yeah. And that's why filling in for Emily, too, on those remotes, every once in a while, you'll get a signal to wrap it up after 3 minutes. But the last, 2 weeks I've done it, I'm doing it without the Luke Can signal. So let's talk about Morning Live, because next year will mark 20 years on the desk in Morning Live.
For me.
For you.
Yes,
for you. Yeah. Were you hesitant? Was it something you always wanted to jump into? Go back to 2005, taking the job.
Okay, so I had done, as you said, I had done a show called The Morning Market, which was a business show in the morning, and it was a very different format. It was like me in a newsreel of the local news of the day, and then they would put it in with local business news and then with international business news from Bloomberg. So it was very regimented. It was like we had a lot of fun doing it, but it was very bare bones stuff, right? So when the first host of Morning Live, when she left, Kathy Wegner, when she left, it was like our boss came to me and said, okay, well, you kind of get the hours, so could you fill in for a week? And I'm like, yeah, I'll do it, but I am not doing a morning show again. And then, because I thought it was going to be like the same grind, because I had gotten back into reporting then and realized how much I missed it. And I thought, I don't want to give this up again. But then I did that show for 4 days, and then I'm like, I went in and I'm like, okay, I'd like to be considered for that.
Yeah.
Because it's so different, because it was conversational, and it was energy, and it was live, whereas Morning Market was it was live that morning, but the segments were kind of done 15 minutes ahead of time, right? So there's always this deadline, and there was nobody to talk to. And now on the show, there's people to talk to. There's stuff going on. And you realize that, hey, if you make a mistake on the morning show, people are not wearing pants, or they're running around trying to get their breakfast ready and the kids' lunches ready and everything. So I find that the pressure on that show, because our viewers interact so closely with us too, right? So it's like we're part of their morning.
It's funny you say it took you 4 days, because I was there 5 days last week. Yeah. And I would say, the one-off I filled in a few months ago, right? And it was just 1 day, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is exhausting.
Because you're not used to the hours of the show.
Yeah, but like you said, it goes by so quickly.
It does.
It's just a blur, and it's not just the conversations we get to have on air. It's conversations in break where somebody's in our ear and they're, hey, you did that wrong, or Brody's telling us, you did that right. You did it right. Very rarely do I get that one. You did that one right, actually.
Yeah, because the viewers at home only get to see a fraction of our staff, right?
Yeah.
We've got this whole crew back there that's making us look good.
there's the 9 a.m. Post show, whatever's in the canteen, let's go eat meeting that we have every day. That show, I did have a lot of fun. I got to ask you though, having sat across, putting you on the spot, how did I do?
You did very well. you have to stop yelling.
Oh.
Remember that there's a microphone on you.
So as I push this away, because
No, you're not yelling now,
but that's one of the
But you
comments.
can tell that you're excited about stuff, right?
Yeah.
And you want to tell people, but it's like, remember when we have these little microphones?
That's okay. That's a very good.
And that's my only thing of advice, because you are a natural on air. No, you are. And I remember I was so impressed with Louie when you came in to kind of shadow our show to see what was going on. And I remember the first day, you're like, I am so excited to be able to work with this team. And I'm like, wow, we're so excited to have you. I just thought that was so heartwarming and so nice.
I just think, like, for me, like, I don't take anything really too seriously.
No, and you could tell that the Louie on camera is the Louie at his desk
it's pretty close.
out in the field.
It's pretty close to the same guy. I'm actually wearing the same. Oh, no, I'm not wearing. I only have 2 suits. It was a 50-50 chance that I was wearing the same thing.
See, and you only having 2 suits, I bet viewers don't know that.
I don't think anyone has.
But if I only wore 2 jackets,
Laura Brody notices.
Yes,
Laura Brody notices. She is the outfit tracker for me. I really do appreciate your insights on a lot of things, especially the crime burglary versus a robbery.
Oh, no, robbery versus a break-in.
A break-in.
Everybody's like, I got robbed. And I'm like,
Were you held up at gunpoint?
No. Was there implied violence? No.
So it was a break-in. It was a break-in.
Yes.
I really do appreciate your insights. I really do appreciate getting to work alongside you. And last week, again, one of the highlights of my career. So to get to do it alongside you was really, really nice. And we're going to get to do it again.
Yeah.
So next time, I'll remember not to yell so much.
Lots of fun. Quiet Louie.
Quiet Louie. You know what, though, I do have one gripe. We didn't have any food segments last week.
No.
Not a single food segment last week.
And I'm already full because we had hot dogs today on the show. And were you there?
I had hot dogs.
Okay.
Yeah, I had hot dogs. Don't worry. All right. Well, I'll see you next week, though.
Yeah. Awesome.
And thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
All right. My thanks to Annette Hamm for joining me today. And my thanks to you as well, because we could not do the show without your support. Hey, make sure you like and subscribe to CHCH Podcast so you never miss an episode of this show or any of the other great shows we have for you, including an all-new episode of Sportsline with Bubba O'Neill. And you can catch that every Monday to Friday on CHCH Podcast, or you can go to chch.com/podcast. I want to thank Laura Brody for directing today's show after giving her a few shots as well. And thank you one more time for listening. Really do appreciate it. From all of us here at CHCH, I'm Louie Butko. Have a great day.